imagine all life as you know it stopping instantaneously and every molecule in your body exploding at the speed of light.
Total Protonic Reversal.Protonic Reversal.
Protonic Reversal with your host, Conan Neutron. Broadcasting from a secret underground lair in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
A gigantic middle finger to everything that is rock about music, rock and roll, and corporate power.
The thing is, though, if you don't laugh, you're going to go on a killing spree with sharp nails.
Confidence of a hero or a fool. I wasn't exactly certain which.
Could not be more professional.
It's only one I choose to go my life to. That's okay.
It means something. It means something.
And take that away.
You know, that's my take. What's yours?
Protonic Reversal!
That's like a science thing, right?
Indeed. It is a science thing. It is a science place. It is a scientific fact. We are all up in your face. It is time for the one, the only...
Protonic Reversal.
Holy crap, everybody. Can I just start off this episode by doing... I guess I just did. Wow. Bucket list guest for me, Mr. Jerry Casale of Devo, periodic table of the elements, Devo. One of the defining bands for my personality and part of the ethos of this show, Devo. I'm over the moon. No two ways about it. For those just joining the show for the first time, radioneutron.com for the archives. This is, well, usually Thursdays, 8 Eastern, 7 Central, 6 Mountain, 5 Pacific. These days, almost all the time. And there is a Patreon for folks that want to get episodes earlier. Patreon.com/Protonic Reversal. You hear all about that later. Nobody cares about any of that. Let's just get to Jerry Casale. Let's have a little freedom of choice first. That's a little freedom of choice for you. A little choice action by some young up-and-comers known as Devo, or Devo, going to go with the correct pronunciation. And with us now, we have none other than the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Jerry Casale. Welcome to the show, sir.
Hi there. How are you doing?
Fantastic. So de-evolution is indubitably real. It is without question. We are living in it. We are suffering in it.
Yeah.
How does it feel to be fundamentally right about everything and have everything be more depressing than you ever possibly could imagine?
Well, yeah. Look, we weren't mean-spirited, and we didn't want to be right, but we turned out to be canaries in a coal mine, and this isn't funny. This is real Devo.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I like black humor, but this is ridiculous.
Yeah, Richard Pryor's black humor.
Right. Don't get me wrong. I'm fine with the blacks. Yeah, it's mind-blowing. I mean, it's something that's been a unifying theme with all these shows, no matter who I talk to, whether the artist is world-renowned, such as yourself, or a struggling indie artist. Everyone's in this same horrifying nightmare roller coaster together right now with not only nobody. We'd be better off with nobody at the wheel than who we actually have.
Boy, that's for sure.
So,
because you know what? If nobody's at the wheel, then the boat has a chance of missing the rocks. But when you got somebody steering it into the rocks on purpose,
it's a percentage game.
Really, well, he might as well be a member of ISIS flying into the Trade Center.
Yeah, it's as the kids say, a harsh toke, to say the least.
Wow, this is amazing. It's like you couldn't ask for a more kind of, I don't know, suicidal Western culture death wish than to have number 45 at the helm as things fall apart.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to see folks of who consider themselves critically thinking-minded kind of look back on the Bush years with some sort of yearning because things have gotten that bad. It's like, wow, really?
Now, how low is that?
Yeah, that's
when W starts looking good, you know you're in trouble.
Right? It gets rough business, to say the least. So, I mean, and those ideas have always been present with the heart of Devo. And again, I'm saying Devo because I believe that's how you're meant to say it, right?
Yeah, well, you know what was funny is when it became a contraction for de-evolution, and when it migrated from being an art literary concept to musical application.
Yes.
As soon as we left the little hearth of Akron, Ohio, and started putting out our independent singles, suddenly we didn't have control of anything. You know, you don't have control of anything once you're out there in the world. And so when we got to California in the summer of 1977, everybody was going, Devo! Devo! And we went, what? It's Devo. But then we realized, no, they are determining what Devo is.
Right.
And saying it like that, which made it more kind of crass and low, was so much better than Devo, which sounded pretentiously like some European art movement.
Right.
So we just went with Devo after that. Like, yeah, we're Devo.
in the true sense of Americanization, and that they could take some lovely, beautiful, melodious sounding name and then truncate it down to something vulgar.
Right.
At Ellis Island or whatnot. Yeah.
That's America.
And it's fascinating as well, and I don't want to go over it too much in depth because I really want to try to cover some stuff with you that has not been covered, but just the idea that the term Devo was used as a term of derision by folks that maybe were called out and through being cool
Yeah.
for young deviants, freaks, nerds, weirdos, punks such as myself, just as a short term post Whippet, of course. term of, I guess, name calling. I guess I'm trying to think of a more.
Well, yeah, 40 years ago, when fans would write letters, and mail letters, and you would get fan mail. I can't tell you, and we would read it actually. That was us, right? We were like, nerds, and we were experimental, and we were serious, and so we actually read the mail. And I can't tell you how many stories were just identical about, hey, liking you got me beat up in the 11th grade.
I'm sending you my dental bill.
Yeah, over and over and over. Like if a kid had a short haircut, or if a kid was, wearing like a kind of like magenta or fuchsia T-shirt, he got screamed at, and the epitaph was Devo. Hey, Devo! He just got pointed at. So all the disenfranchised people became labeled as Devo.
And, of course, it was meant, as many things yelled at by bullies, as something to marginalize and make people feel small. But
correct.
but folks that, were called it almost to a certain degree, for a lot of us, it became more of like a rallying cry, right? And it was like, well, why not? Okay, sure. We're all Devo, and
exactly. It became a badge of courage. Yeah.
And it's something where culture has changed, and in a certain degree, some people claim that nerd culture is ascendant with, the major motion pictures, action pictures, instead of being Arnold Schwarzenegger or Sylvester Stallone running around shooting terrorists, it's Marvel movies and Batman and things along those lines, and that nerd culture has been mainlined. But that said, right. I feel like what Devo was doing, not just musically, but the entire approach had a much different set of stakes to it. And I guess where I'm driving with it is the fact that it started almost as a collective and art movement kind of mindset. It seemed to maintain that as it went on. And that's only coming from the outside. And don't worry, there's a question here eventually. So do you feel that...
No, I get it.
Yeah,
Well, look, you know what happens to anybody that enters the arena of pop culture is you have to expect being trivialized. And that was true 40 years ago. And today it's 10 times as true. And then there's, because of digital culture, there's the online trolls, things we didn't have, actually. We had time to disseminate our message. We had time to develop. We had time for people to actually, contemplate and digest what we were doing, because we still had the album format where music was taken seriously. When an artist put out a vinyl LP, the sequencing and everything else was way thought out, because it had to be. Because this was a serious piece of creativity, of content that that cost a lot of money, actually, to make.
Right. And time. Investment of time and money as well.
And so everything was seriously thought out. So when an artist put out something, if you liked one of the songs on the record, chances are you were going to like 6 or 7 of them, because it was a cohesive body of work. It wasn't just some like throwaway where, the record company spends $250,000 on one track and a big name producer,
right,
to make it sound good, and then the rest. That didn't happen.
So, it wasn't the same level of engagement as, and again, I don't know anybody in the band, like the Waitresses or something, where, there's, even though there might be a...
Yeah, right. It was...
From the...
we were serious.
Right.
It was substance.
Right, exactly. And that's not to denigrate any of their creative work, but to say that it was coming from a far different place with artistic intent, which... I think that's something that certainly artists I talk to on this show a lot is a correlating factor. But the fact that you guys got in with the song. Like, you broke into the mainstream. And of course, everybody immediately wants you to do exactly the same thing over again. So the thing that made it interesting in the first place, not at all, is something that, why don't you just write 10 more of those and make your next record? And that didn't seem like that was on the game plan for you guys.
Believe me, we paid the price for not just recreating Whip It, But if anybody had been paying attention, if you played Are We Not Men, the first record, and then Duty Now for the Future, and then Freedom of Choice, and then New Traditionalists, and then Oh No, It's Devo, each one is different.
Right.
Each one represented our next kind of point of development as artists, where we're not interested in keeping up the same thing. We had new excitement, new interests, and new ideas, and a different statement we wanted to make.
The production values are very different. The sounds are very different. Of course, you guys were experimenting with different types of synths, and it wasn't like it is today. It's hard to describe. I feel like I should have a Kids These Days segment, and I don't want to, but I keep having to explain things that, for folks that have been around for a while, are obvious, but you couldn't just download a pack of 200 synth sounds and start cycling through them for your TikTok video or whatever along those lines.
Certainly not. Certainly not.
There was a lot of, honest to goodness, pioneering with different types of equipment that I'm sure it always worked exactly the way it was meant to, out of the box immediately, the way you wanted it to.
We spent so much time with tedious, new products and technology that were really hard to deal with, and all the analog stuff, and the early sequencers from Roland that had a kind of 2 or 3 hundredths of a millisecond delay, so that no matter what a great musician you were, you felt it being behind the beat.
Alan's giving you like a dirty look, and like, hey, it's not me, it's the keyboard. Oh, sure it is.
Because Alan was a human veteran.
An incredible drummer, and someone that has been influential in very interesting ways.
Yeah.
For a lot of different music that maybe people wouldn't expect, which actually is something that I wanted to talk about, because when I think about when you make the list of who are your favorite players of this this list, favorite bass players, favorite drummers, etc. Alan for sure is one of my favorite drummers. I think Bob's like one of my favorite guitar players. Some of the stuff he came up with on guitar like blew my mind, and I would sit here and try to rip it off, fail utterly, and come up with my own awesome stuff to do it. And because people didn't consider Devo, or the mainstream folks didn't consider Devo a traditional rock band, they didn't see it in that context. And I think it kind of does a disservice to the playing for both of those guys.
Well, sure, because they weren't flashy. They were all business. And they are favorites among musicians who understand how hard it is to do what they did.
Right.
And yeah, the people don't get it because they want to see Tommy Lee.
and it's fantastic. I mean, it speaks to the credit of Josh Freese too, as a almost drummer chameleon.
He is a chameleon. He's amazing that way. He's amazing
because he can do that. He can do the Alan thing, and then he can also sit right in with the replacements. He can sit in with 9 Inch Nails, and it works for all of it.
What's that famous Woody Allen movie, Zelig?
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the only movies that didn't involve him having sex with underage girls.
Got to stay on brand.
Yeah. But yeah, he's Zelig. Yeah, Josh Freese is Zelig. He takes on the persona of whatever style of music he's playing. He embodies it. He's not like a studio session guy.
Right.
That kind of distills it down. Oh, you want that? I'll do an ish version of it. He becomes it, and he does it. Like a method actor. How
did you end up hooking up with Josh Freese, actually?
Actually, that was my brother Bob Casale's doing. He worked with the Vandals.
Oh, I had forgotten that he played with the Vandals, because that's another. He just fits right in with the music. It fits so nicely.
That's where he started. And when Alan left Devo, and we were in this, strange limbo and hiatus, Bob started talking about Josh. And we never really got an opportunity to do anything until the early 90s with Josh. And so as soon as we were, Mark Mothersbaugh, allowed us to be active again, because he was refusing to play live shows, he was refusing to do records, refusing to do everything. And so when we played Lollapalooza and the closing ceremony of the Sundance Film Festival, there was Josh Breed. And after 2 gigs, it's like I didn't want anybody else.
I was lucky enough to see you, I think, 4 times. And I wasn't actually aware that it wasn't Alan at the time, because different times, right? Now there's this instant awareness. Oh, you didn't see that tweet? You didn't see that Snapchat? Okay, dude, I get it. But yeah, I had no idea. I was just like, oh man, they sound great. Because I was that was the Lollapalooza was with the Ramones played as well.
Oh, right, that one, yes.
And Melvin's played, bunch of stuff I didn't care about. Soundgarden played,
right.
Metallica. That was the. Right. What's funny about that is some people term that the sellout Lollapalooza, which is like they got Devo. How sellout is that going to be?
What made that sellout?
The rationale was specious at best.
Just because it sold out?
It sold out, yeah, exactly. Can you talk? We touched upon. I'm not going to make you do a moratorium of every record, but Duty Now for the Future is a record that, in my mind, its estimation has grown over the years, but very austere production, very, very cold production as a listener that kind of put me off at first.
I was very unhappy.
Can you speak to that record a little bit?
Yeah, well, those songs deserved a much better recording experience. Those songs live, some of them are still to this day the ones where the audience, loses it, like Smart Patrol DNA. We're talking about major, huge rock songs. Right,
yeah, they rip hard, and when you play them live, it is
And that's
great.
The way they should have been recorded, so that they captured that energy. But Ken Scott was incapable of that. And Ken Scott was a bad choice.
So how do you feel about the legacy of that record? Do you feel, because some people kind of consider it the lost Devo record, which I'm like, I don't know how lost it could be, because
it's frustrating, because those songs live really were explosive and moved the audience.
Right.
And as you said, the production is so kind of anal. Not even in a good way. Folks, not putting down anal.
No, it's hey, if that's your thing, good on you.
But anal retentive.
Right.
That's what we're talking about.
Right. And it's for me, my pathway into it was just it took a while. It took me being an older man to be like, you know what, these songs are actually really good. Like, I don't know, why did I not like this? And
yeah. It's the production that made you not like it. I guarantee it.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's certainly not the songs. I mean, especially because there's been live records of you guys, and just having seen you guys, like, God, these songs are awesome. I should check that record back out. So, first record, I think you've gone over a lot with. By the time you actually finally recorded a record, which ended up being Eno, I think you're angling for Bowie, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, we had written 50 songs before we got to record a record, and we had a plan in place to produce the first record with David Bowie, and then those plans, like they say, the best laid plans of mice and men. He just kept delaying it because he had so many things going on in his career, and he started to branch out into feature films.
That's right.
And so he said, listen, I understand why you can't wait any longer, because I felt we were missing our moment, because we were part of the zeitgeist. We were around at the same time in Akron, right, unfortunately, as the Ramones and Blondie and the Talking Heads were in New York.
Right.
Right? They weren't ahead of us. We were doing the same thing, but we were unsung and unknown. And now, right at that time that we're talking to Bowie, which is like, it starts in September of 77. From September to December, all these bands released their first records.
Right. It was all kind of happening around the same time. Like you said, it was like a zeitgeist moment.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't want to get left behind. You've been doing it for a while.
We're going to look like we're imitating these people or something. You know, that's how the people are going to think of us. We got to do something now, you know. So, and I told him that. And he goes, okay. He goes, I want you to fly to New York and meet Brian, Brian Eno. And he had worked with him on Low and a number of things. And of course, we revered Brian Eno from Roxy Music days, and then his, like, Here Come the Warm Jets record. And
awesome stuff, yeah, and timeless. Still holds up to this
Brian Eno, Yeah. And so we went to New York and we met him, and he was ready to go right away. And he was ready to use the same studio that he and David had used outside of Cologne, Germany, with Connie Planck. And, the famous, quote, kraut rock producer that worked with Khan and many others. Mm-hmm. And so we jumped at that. We were off to Germany in the winter.
Yeah, had you guys ever been abroad before at that point?
No.
Wow. Hell of a first trip.
No, I had really never been out of Ohio except Detroit, Michigan a couple times before we went to California in the summer of 77. So yeah, I'd never been to Europe at all.
How was that experience as far as recording the record? I mean, obviously you were more than ready to record the record at that point. You had...
Well, in a way it was, in retrospect, it was really good because, we get picked up at the Cologne airport by this guy that looks like he should have a role in Conan the Barbarian. And he's got, the long hippie hair, the beard, the white fur coat, no shirt on underneath, and necklaces and chains.
Fantastic.
And, wide whale corduroy flare pants and brown boots. And we're thinking, this guy is Devo. Like, this,
he's personifying it, yeah.
This is what we make fun of.
On a large scale level.
And we think, oh shit, we're in trouble. And of course we jump into his big Mercedes and he drives, at 90, 100 miles an hour on the Autobahn, but like a full 45 minutes out of Cologne into some godforsaken, rural, isolated place.
And you're like, are we going to make a record? You're going to murder us. What's happening here?
Yeah. And we're stuck in some, bed and breakfast with no central heating, and we have to sleep under huge down comforters, and he comes to pick us up in the morning, and he takes us to his farmhouse, and he lives in the farmhouse with his wife and son, and they make these huge German breakfasts that seem like a joke. I mean, like a dinner table full of processed cut meats and loaves of homemade bread and cheese, and then the eggs come and the cava, so this chocolate stuff you spread on toast.
How Teutonic.
And the studio is in a barn across from his house, and it's very rustic and very crude, but of course the equipment inside is state of the art, total state of the art. And then Brian Eno shows up, and of course he's in his Zen phase, and his hair is cut short, and he's got a little V-neck sweater and a button-down, like, English brogue shirt on, and brown corduroy pants and little slippers, and he's got his deck of oblique strategy cards that we have to start our sessions with.
I was going to ask about oblique strategies, if he had already was still developing that at that point, or did you remember?
He had developed it.
Do you remember any of the specific cards that came up during the session?
All I remember is here's Devo that had this, brutalist industrial aesthetic and looked askance at anything that sniffed of far-fetched hippiedom or
Right.
transcendent thought. We were debunkers. That's what we were. And my God, my dog is. What's wrong, Beta? I don't want to move the camera around, but I'm going to let her out. Hold on one second.
Okay, that's fine. Sounds good. We're live with Mr. Jerry Casale of the legendary band Devo. Also, we're live with Jerry Casale's dog, who wants to be let out. As most dogs eventually do want to be let out.
Well, she's a sad dog.
Oh.
She's a 70-pound Labradoodle, sweet, very sweet, but she developed arthritis.
Ooh.
And she's only 7.5 and moves like grandma.
Yeah, that's tough, man. I'm sorry to hear that.
And she's so friendly, and she doesn't know what's wrong. She just knows she can't move the way she wants. She still wants to run and, swim and chase a ball, retrieve.
Do dog stuff.
Anyway, so I think, as much as we really liked Brian, and he's a very smart guy, really smart guy, and just where he had come to at that point in his life was almost like a ridiculous non sequitur to Devo. It was antithetical to where we were at, and so we tried to limit conversations and stuff to the songs and the production.
Right.
Because we would start like playing the oblique strategies game, and we'd have to draw cards and then pretend to contemplate what we read on that card and how that would affect our recording.
Right.
It was like, no, we have written these songs. We know why.
You know what you want to do.
We're very conscious artists. We've lived with some of them 3 years, 4 years. And we want to record them the way we want to record them.
Well, certainly, and that's something where a lot of bands are in that situation. Maybe certainly not to the level that Devo was, where there's a zeitgeist around it as well. But just you get everything written. You try it out. You work out the kinks. You get it where you want to. You have it envisioned where the record's going to be, and almost gets to the point it's like, oh my God, can we just record this already, please?
Well, I know it's hard to describe, but it's like, anybody with a very conceptual approach to their art, whether it's a film director or a dancer or musician or a painter. Just imagine suddenly you're with somebody that says, "Wait, give me the brush. I'm gonna paint this with you. I'm gonna put some brush strokes on there, right?
I'm gonna put this over here."
Right, or the director somebody says, "Well, listen, I think that's a great idea, but I'm going to tell the DP what to do for half the spin." It's like we didn't want that kind of a producer. We wanted Brian to bring things to the table that had to do with studio knowledge that we didn't have. We knew what we wanted to sound like. We didn't always know how to get there.
Yeah, and
he did that. He did bring those things.
It wasn't necessarily going to be, extra string sections or harmony vocals or things that weren't necessary.
And that's what he was doing at first. He was putting tons of harmony vocals on. He was adding synth parts that, he wanted to be beautiful. He had reached that point in his life. He didn't want to be ugly. He didn't want to play dissonant stuff.
Right.
He was playing beautiful, like, atmospheric pads, and things like that. But then he got into it, and he came up with that really nasty reverse echo slap on Mongoloid with the snare drum.
Yeah. Which is a very defining sound for the song. Like it makes it stand out.
And he was cutting that on and off on every second snare beat, right? And so that was we knew good ideas when we heard them in terms of our own tastes, right? It wasn't like we were going to reject everything he did because we didn't think of it. We're not those people.
Right.
And he came up with one of the most brilliant things is he brought in the Tibetan monkey chants. When he heard Jacko Homo, he said, "Listen, there's this recording of the Tibetans doing these monkey chants, and we're gonna put those on tape, and we're going to beat match it. We're gonna slow it down to where it's gonna come in to your song and be on time, you know." And we heard him, and we said, "Fuck yeah, we allowed to do that? Like, you know, do we have to pay somebody to use these?"
Right? Do we have to? Are we going to be indebted to these monks? Are they going to come looking for us?
And of course, nobody deserved that more than monks. But unfortunately, it was kind of a public. What do you call it? Public domain recording. Because it was old enough, and it was through the Library of Congress that we got away with it. So it didn't make me feel great to rip off monks.
Yeah, they generally are ripped off enough as it is. So that's
it would turn around on us many times over, but we got ripped off big.
And did you feel that? So there was a couple songs that there are earlier recordings of. I'm thinking of Jacko Homo specifically, and a couple of the other ones that ended up in the Pioneers Who Got Scalped, which is a great compendium of just like good balance of here's the hits and here's all the weird stuff as well.
Yeah,
and in some ways I actually they're different, but on some days I actually prefer that version of Mongoloid, for instance, because it has a totally different feel to it. Like it's got like a meaner feel in the earlier version.
Well, you could say it's more honest because it happened at a time when we hadn't seen Paris. We were down on the farm.
Right.
And once you go to New York and LA and you're influenced by all these bands that you're seeing, we saw everybody, right? I mean, we saw Iggy play, we saw The Damned, we saw Suicide, we saw the Ramones. You could go on and on and on who we saw. And the Sex Pistols, and saw all these bands live. And you can't say it's not affecting you. You wouldn't be honest if you said it wouldn't affect you. Because it was just the sheer energy and performance and the new kind of punky BPMs that were insane, right?
Right.
So we got pumped up. We sounded like we were on blow before we ever did blow.
So, and during that time, that's also when John Lennon was kicking around New York as well.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Didn't he see you guys play at some point?
Well, apparently he saw us play. Now, I never personally saw him. He came to Max's, according to the lore. Nobody in the band saw him there. Mark says he came up to Mark when Mark got in a van outside of Max's and said, "Hey, I know where you got that lick from Uncontrollable Urge. Us."
Of course, you're talking about the yeah.
Well,
yeah. It may. I mean, I could see it a little bit. I could see it a little bit.
A little bit. I thought it was more off of Led Zeppelin, personally.
Yeah. So,
but of course, they ripped everything off.
Yeah, I mean, it's because I say, who are they to talk? Really, I mean, come on, guys.
They keep winning lawsuits after years, though. It's funny.
Well, there's something to be said for entrenched power, which is an entirely different conversation, or a larger scoping conversation, I suppose.
Well, it's just that intellectual property is not respected anymore, and if you have deep pockets, you're going to win those suits.
Right. Just make the other guy give up, right? Can you when you're mentioning the monks, it brought to mind the fact that Are We Not Men has the Stones cover on it, and there's a story about getting clearance from that from Mick that I quite like. I'm not sure how much of it is lore and how much of it is for real. Was that difficult to get clearance from?
Well, see, that's back when intellectual property was taken seriously, and because we had changed the music so much, it was looked at in a pejorative way. It was called parody. Like, you guys have done a parody, and there was a clause, in music law where you had to go get permission from the writer or writers to do the song that way, or else Warner's wanted nothing to do with that. They wanted it off the record. So Mark and I flew to New York from Los Angeles in March of '78, and we met Mick Jagger at Peter Rudge's office somewhere in 57th Street, in some building that had condos and apartments and offices. And of course, it's this lush office with these oversized leather club chairs, brown leather, English style, Afghan rugs, a fireplace going, big windows looking out towards the city. And there's Peter Rudge in a three-piece, Savile Row suit, pinstripe, with a paisley tie, and one of those creepy shirts that Robert Kraft of the Patriots still wears with the what color? That 80s shit.
I know precisely what you're talking about, yes.
Yeah. Of course, Mark and I are nervous, and we make small talk with him, and he goes, okay, I've called up to Mick's apartment. He's coming down. So suddenly the door opens, and there's Mick, and it's like, I don't know, 1:30 in the afternoon, and he looks kind of sleepy, and he's got this velour turtleneck on and some wide whale corduroy pants and socks. He doesn't have any shoes on. And he nods, says hello, and shakes hands, and then he asks Peter if he's got any claret. So Peter opens his wine cabinet and pours him a glass of red wine, English call their light Bordeaux claret. So Mick swirls the glass around, sits down in the club chair, and goes, all right, let's hear it then. And there's a boom box on the mantel fireplace.
And you guys are in the same room. You're in the same room with a shoeless Mick Jagger.
Yeah.
Enjoying
And
some
Mark
wine.
goes the cassette in, hits the boom box, and it starts, and Mark sits down. Jagger's got his head down, swirling his wine, sitting in the chair, and he's about 25 seconds goes by. He's still looking down. He's still swirling his wine. And, of course, we think, oh, man, we're fucked, And then he puts the wine down on the hardwood floor, and he stands up, and he moves towards the boombox and starts dancing like Mick Jagger in front of the fireplace. He's doing all the Mick Jagger moves that you see Mick Jagger do. And he spins around in his stocking feet on the hardwood floor, and he goes, I like it. I like it.
Brilliant.
And we're all grinny and we're all relieved. We're like Bill and Ted's Big Adventure. We're not worthy.
Yeah. And, so that's got to be around the same time they were doing what Some Girls around then?
Yeah, they put out Some Girls at that point. Yeah.
And I think that's the one that's got the kind of that's a pretty good tune, but it's almost like a disco-y kind of number, right. if I remember. So it wasn't exactly out of the zeitgeist for Mick. Like, he was doing his best to keep the Stones relevant, right?
The denouement, that story kind of turns it on its head, because everybody's all smiley, good, shakes hands, no problem. And of course, you have to understand, back then, we weren't going to get any of the publishing, no matter how different it was. So we fly back to L.A., and Monday I call our new manager, Elliot Roberts, and I say, hey, guess what? Mick liked it. It's okay. It's going on the record. He goes, yeah, I know. Peter Rudge already called me. He goes, listen, before you guys ever went there, I told Peter, tell Mick to tell these guys he likes it, because we're going to make him a lot of money. And that was Elliot Roberts. He just wanted to like deflate my heart on.
Yeah.
That was.
I was going to say providing a pin for your balloon.
Yeah, it was like, here you are, you dumb little shit. Here's the real world.
Yeah. Though it's still a pretty cool story, but yeah, that's a little deflated as far as that goes.
Yeah.
So, and that's awesome. I mean, it's insane, but it's awesome. So we kind of backtracked a little bit, which I'm glad we did. When you were hanging with Iggy, was that before the first record, or was that after?
Yeah, that was in the summer of '77. Tony Basil came to the Starwood, our second show there. Our first show was a showcase where we only played like a half hour before the main act, Clown, the hair metal band, came on called Clown.
That was the actual name. Was that?
Yeah.
Was it with any self-awareness of any kind, or
Clown was a headliner?
Okay.
No, not at all.
I don't mean to get hung up on a piece of banal minutia, but that's very funny to me. Go ahead.
And of course, Clown's audience hated us and were throwing things at us and laughing at us, but we were used to them,
right?
Because that's what happened in Akron all the time. So Kip Cohen of A&M Records, who brought us out for the showcase, was supposed to show up and see us live. He only showed up for the last song and a half. And he was in, a white Panama suit, bleach blonde hair,
right,
no shirt, with a couple bimbo girls. And he left without talking to us.
Interesting.
And then he called me Monday morning and said, "Hey, guys, come on into the office. Got to talk to you." So we went to A&M Records after playing on a Saturday with Clown. And we came in, and he goes, "Go ahead, sit down, man." And he had this, it was the whole cliche. It was his office was all rattan furniture with, palm tree prints on the fabric cushion. And then, potted Dracaena oblongata plan. It was like Casablanca, right?
Right.
And he's in khaki shorts and sandals, and a Hawaiian style shirt unbuttoned 2 or 3 buttons with a big gold chain.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I'm getting the visual, yeah. No, I believe you.
He goes, guys.
I definitely believe you.
I caught your set. We go, wait a minute, we saw you come in. He goes, well, listen, I'm a busy guy. I'm sorry I was late. We go, yeah, we wondered what happened. He goes, well, I had another thing I had to go to. We're like, okay. And he goes, listen, I'm just going to be straight with you because I brought you out here, and, I signed the tubes, okay? And I don't need another disaster like that. So,
wow.
He goes,
okay.
He goes, I think it's great. You guys, you got your thing. You're really creative. But I don't know how else to put it. You're just not my kind of girl. And Alan Myers goes, not your kind of girl? And he goes, yeah, you could march 6 girls in here, 6 beautiful teenage girls naked, okay? And one's got small tits, one's got a mole on her ass, one's got fat thighs. What I'm trying to say is, you're just not my kind of girl. And at this, I want to kill you, right? I want to kill you.
Yeah. This guy sounds like a real piece of work.
I mean, it's so offensive, and we just, we were so fish out of water and hadn't heard the filth yet, right?
Right.
Hadn't experienced the Hollywood filth. And because this would just turn out to be de rigueur, he was just one of a type.
It's that time and that place was a terrarium, or that specific species could certainly thrive.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's like Tom Hanks' cute little paean to post Beatles. That Thing You Do. You've seen that movie? Thing You Do.
Right.
And they finally get to meet the head of Playtone Records in L.A. Tom Hanks brings him over to meet the head, and he's eating a sandwich. And the lead singer tries to interrupt him about getting in the studio and recording a new song, and he loses it on him. And that was just so accurate. So fucking accurate.
Petty despots and figure vertigos.
Oh, God. And just the hideous, crude, vile personalities. So I had nothing to say to him. I was losing it. I was fuming. And he goes, so guys, just, I put you up at the, apartments there in Oakwood Garden Apartments in Burbank, and which we found out later they owned a stake in, so they put all their acts up there. And he goes, look, you're there till the end of the month if you want to be. It's paid. So, hang out, jacuzzi, get laid. You'll get great stories. You can go home to Akron and tell your friends all about these great stories in L.A., right?
Oh, and that Johnny Big Time thing, sure, yeah.
Have a good time. So we go out of the parking lot and I go, that motherfucker, that piece of shit, that fucking asshole. And Alan goes, well, maybe we didn't deserve a record deal. And I go, fuck that shit. Bullshit. Yeah, we're not going anywhere. And I went back to David Knight at the Starwood and begged him to let us play there again. And he said, okay, I'll give you a chance. He goes, you guys shouldn't have had to play in front of Clown. And he goes, Steve Samioff, he wrote one of those freebie punk newspapers that was in every town, like the music paper, right?
Right.
I forget what it was called. In New York it was the New York Rocket. Out here it was something else. And he had come to the gig, and we didn't meet him either, but he had written us up. So David Knight let us play it. And this time we got a week's worth of publicity. And Tony Basil showed up with Dean Stockwell and Iggy Pop. And it had turned out that Iggy Pop actually had listened to the cassette we left him when we went to see him in Cleveland in March of '77 on the Idiot Tour with David Bowie playing keyboard. And we just thought it would get thrown in the trash like a number of others, right?
Sure, yeah. Why would you think it would be anything other than that?
But Bowie told Iggy to sift through the cassettes, and if he found anything interesting, to let him know. So Iggy had remembered Devo, and when Tony brought it up, he says, oh yeah, I heard them guys. So he shows up with, and they, of course, Tony had the run of the place and was a celebrity, so they came backstage. She introduces herself. I'm starstruck. I had seen her in all the magazines. I had probably masturbated to her. And no, seriously. And
I believe you.
Yeah. And so I just can't believe it. She's got this little gold lame vest on, no bra, no top, black Toreador pants, and 4-inch heels, open-toed heels with red painted toenails, and her hair up in a kind of, French twist. I mean, she was ready for the stage. And, I was there was me, Mr. Ohio Spud, trying to act cool, but getting a boner. And she introduces Dean Stockwell, who I didn't recognize at all. I remembered him only from his youth and early movies, like, what was Boy with the Blue Hair?
Yeah, he's been in tons of movies. Absolutely. Like one time, for whatever reason, I ended up looking up his discography, and he's been in a lot. But it's hard to remember like a definitive. Oh yeah, that movie is the one that was his definitive role or anything.
And then she points to this guy who's seated against the wall, looking kind of wasted. He's got regular kind of eyeglasses on, in a kind of a messy chopped up punky hairdo and just a T-shirt and jeans. And she goes, and this is James Osterberg. And I knew who that was, right? I'm like,
right.
And now I had seen him like 6 months before that looking like Iggy Pop, right? So I go, oh, yeah, you're Iggy Pop. And he just looks up at me and goes, I am Iggy Pop. Like, you asshole, right? He looks at me. And I go, oh, I'm really sorry. I didn't recognize you, man. You know. That's how my thing was. He got to talking and he explained how what James, what David had told him.
Right.
And we recounted the whole night there at Swingo's in Cleveland. And he said he was going to call David and tell him that he saw us and that we were great. And he did. And he referred me to Stan Diamond, who was David Bowie's attorney for Beulah Brothers Records that he had with Tony Freeze. And that's how those talks started. Everything was through Stan Diamond. And then eventually it was through this girl, Coco, that was Bowie's Girl Friday, who everybody had to go through. As it turns out, I found out the various public figures that Coco was notorious.
Coco was like the gatekeeper in this situation?
Yeah, total empowered gatekeeper, yes. Yep.
So, oh wow, that's quite the tableau. And no clown this time, so that's good.
No clown this time. And we got a crowd because of Steve Samioff and this punk paper. We got a crowd that came to see Devo.
Right.
The word on the street in the little new wave punky community, because I had, along with everybody else in the band, seeded the whole Sunset and Santa Monica Boulevard telephone poles with Devo stuff, right?
Right.
We did our job. We stapled Devo stuff all over the fucking place. And Steve Samioff had written about us, and that was that. We got at least a crowd of 100 and so people that were there to see us, and they went nuts, and David Knight asked us back. We started sleeping on floors. I started sleeping with Tony Basil.
Wow, what a remarkable turnaround.
It sure was, and she hooked me up with all these locals that were connected and helped me out with the business.
Yeah.
So that I got to meet Marshall Burrow, and I got into the store. I got into the whiskey, and so on and so on. And then we got ourselves into Mabuhay Gardens because of her connections, and it just mushroomed quickly. Things happened so fast back then. Everything was so fast. Each week was a complete new level and new adventure. And we ended up being out in L.A. for 3.5 months that culminated in the famous Halloween shows at the Starwood. Got shut down by the fire department because David Knight oversold them. And by that time we were being courted by 8 or 10 record companies, all competing.
So it kind of took advocacy from known commodities to wag the dog in this case.
Right. And, most of the people approaching us were nefarious characters like Kip Cohen, and they would ask for too much, and they wanted a piece of publishing. Right. And they wanted to sign you to deals where you didn't have control over the money you were supposedly getting. And I had read a book about the music business put out the head of Chrysalis Records, our kind of music. He had guided the careers of people like Whitney Houston.
Okay, gotcha. All right.
You see him. He's still an important character. Clive Davis.
There you go.
And he wrote a book about the music business. And and it's so ironic that he would be telling artists, watch out for these things, when he had done all of them to the artist. But he said, don't sign anything but a production deal where you control the money, and so that you pay the studio costs, you pick the producer,
right?
Right? You decide how money will get spent on in-store promotional items, blah, 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 right?
Yeah, so nobody
And
can
don't-
launder money through your band budget or something along those lines. Yeah. Sorry, what was that?
And don't let anybody take a piece of your publishing.
Yeah.
So it's like, so I was armed with these, these don'ts, and I stuck to them, and so I became known right away as the difficult guy.
Right.
So right away they would go to Mark, because Mark liked to tell people what they wanted to hear and wanted to be liked.
Right.
And I didn't give a fuck if I was liked, because they were trying to rip Devo off and nip our careers in the bud as far as I was concerned. So I wanted to preserve what Devo was about and get us to the first base with intact.
Right.
Intact.
And
I thought both do that. But his Bewlay Brothers deal was another ripoff. And that's why we didn't sign with Bewlay Brothers.
well, and
Because Warner was going to give Bewlay Brothers $500,000 an album. Bewlay Brothers were going to turn around and give us $250 an album. But the $500 album was all recoupable from Devo income. So we were signed to Bewlay, who was distributed by Warner's. It wasn't a direct deal. And when I told David Berman at Warner Brothers that I wanted a direct deal, he just thought, "You little fucker, you little shit, you're ruining this whole,"
right. You presumptuous Ohio screwhead.
Yeah.
How dare you? First of all, how dare you?
And I stuck to it, so he finally offered us something short of that, called a contract of first refusal, where he says, "Here's what we'll give you. We're guaranteeing this. We're putting it in writing. If we like the record, this is what you will get."
Right.
And we went to Germany without a record deal, with Brian as the producer on board, because Warner's had promised him what he would get. And he knew more than us how the business really worked, way more than us. He knew he was going to get this deal.
Oh man, it's like you almost need a conspiracy theory style flowchart to keep up with all of it, right?
Oh, and that was just the beginning. I mean, all those stories you hear, they're not exaggerated. It's always hi diddly dee. It's the actor's life for me. It's Pinocchio. You're going to Donkey Island, or Pleasure Island.
Right.
It's really the boys turn into donkeys after they get reamed in the ass.
Yeah, it's so fascinating that Devo, being such a subversive musical entity, that you really followed your own compass, and in that way came from definitionally what I would say is the mindset of punk rock, if not what later became defined as the sound of punk rock, with all the rules of engagement that followed.
Yeah. Well, punks didn't like us because we didn't follow their rules. It's funny. There is as pedantic and undemocratic as anything. We were true punks. To me, we were the people that were, kind of anarchists. We said, fuck you. We make our rules. There are no rules.
Yeah.
We're going to do what we want to do. It was DIY for real. And we weren't going to, dress a certain way and play only 3 chords and thrash with a certain beat. We were interested in ideas.
Which appeals...
Punks weren't. They were anti-intellectual. They were anti-intellectual.
Yeah.
That was their appeal.
Right, exactly. And being fundamentally intellectual, and I would even say critical thinking music, which is somewhat rare and certainly difficult to base a career on, didn't exactly endear you to the more conservative elements.
No, certainly not. And had Whip It not been a hit, that would have been Devo's last record. I mean, Warner sent an A&R man, who I can't remember which one now, to New York when we were playing the Palladium during the Duty Now for the Future tour in '79 in September. And backstage before the show, he told us, "Listen, Warner's is very unhappy with where things are, and they don't like this record that you're touring on right now. And so unless there's something that makes it to radio, next record is your last one. And we don't care what our contract says. We're not going to honor it, and you can sue us if you want, but you won't win." And then we go on stage.
Yeah, have a great show. Wow. Oh man. So so that's a good segue into talking about freedom of choice, which I just want to get it out of the way that one of my favorite songs from you guys long has been the title track on there, and I've always been annoyed by folks that have covered it, not for the covering it, but because they've lacked the lyrical nuance to realize the turnaround in it. I'm sorry, you broke up there for a second.
I mean, I always wanted. I said, who covered Freedom of Choice? I don't know of that.
There's been a few. Let's see. I think Moby may have done it. I mean, it's nothing.
Yeah, that's a mistake. No, you know who covered it. Well, you know what I'm saying. Look, I love Moby, but no, we don't need vegan feel-good granola version of Freedom of Choice. What we needed was Axl Rose to cover it.
Right.
That's what would have been with Guns N' Roses. We're Freedom of Choice. It would have been incredible.
Watch you, wow.
It would have been a big hit. It was a fucking rocker.
Yeah. Well, and that harkens back again, talking earlier, the fact that there's a lot of, as much as you guys were very academic music, it hit hard and rocked hard, and therefore it's something where it lends itself well when you have like isn't there a Soundgarden cover of "Girl You Want," if I remember correctly, which blew my mind.
It's so bizarre.
Yeah, it's really it's very strange.
They deconstructed it and made me not like it.
At least they try to do their own version, I suppose. That's we can.
Well, that. They did try that, and I did kind of like Kurt Cobain's version of "Turnaround."
Well, and one of the reasons I liked about it is because that was one of the lesser known songs. That was not one of the ones that felt definitively have a definitive version. So
I think it was only a B-side on a single.
Yeah. Yeah, because I didn't even have that on my records when I heard it. I'm like, this is a Devo song? Which one? Where?
And then Rage Against the Machine did the most morose version of Beautiful World you could ever imagine.
Which is a fairly morose song to begin with, which is one of the things that makes it. I've actually never heard that, but I can't say I'm a huge.
Well, we made it sound upbeat.
Right, exactly. That's what made it. So that's the commitment to the bit of it being. The subject matter is very dark, and the subject matter is very like if you stop and think about it, it's like oh, but you listen to it, it's like oh, that's a peppy little number. And it's for folks that just don't listen closely or don't listen to lyrics at all. They maybe would not even notice that.
Well, that's what I loved. That's what Devo was good at that. I mean. Right. On that song, the sucker punch comes at 3 minutes.
Yeah,
and that's, for you, but not for me.
Not for me, exactly. And that's a thing that, for me, that makes the song. That makes it. It's.
That was it.
It would be like it'd be like watching Get Out and only watching the first 20 minutes of it. Oh, it's a delightful movie where a young man and his girlfriend go on a pastoral vacation.
Did you read the original script for Get Out?
No.
Well, it ain't a feel-good ending.
I was going to say, I know that they did there was an alternate ending, which ended probably more like how it actually ended in real life.
How it would actually end, where the cop shows up and assumes the black guy killed the girl, and he goes to jail for murder.
Yeah, and that's...
Hollywood doesn't like that. They don't like that.
Too real. Yeah, what they like is glad-handing giving themselves rewards for solving racism, like that movie Crash, which is one of the most insulting things I've ever seen in my life.
Oh, my God. That was amazing.
Oh, that was a de-evolution in action, my friend.
It sure was. Yeah, that's what they call a load of shit.
But yeah, getting back to and this has been Movie Reviews with Jerry and Conan. Yeah. Speaking of which, I wish Idiocracy is the best concept that was not like it was like 70% of what it should have been.
I was jealous. I mean, that's the Devo movie that we should have made. And the problem is the script was much better than the realization. I mean, Mike Judge didn't do a good job on that one. He didn't have the money he needed. And he didn't have the power he needed. I like Mike Judge a lot. But
he's brilliant. And Silicon Valley alone shows that like he's still not only got it, but has the ability to be insanely funny and relevant now with current topics.
The first 3 seasons of that were right on the money.
Yeah.
Then he kind of jumped the shark.
A little bit, but in my personal estimation, even with not sticking the landing, I think they did a good enough job to be in the upper echelon.
Yeah.
And a smart show, a fundamentally smart show.
The formula became so caffeinated that in every episode there were going to be 3 times that something good happens by something followed bad, by something followed good.
Right. And it's not, I mean, that's not atypical either for kind of not knowing how to land the plane with something. It's not the first time that's happened, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
But getting away from the media critique, freedom of choice, like, so, you know, one of the things that I love so much about the title track on there was, again, like, you know, it's sort of, depending on how closely you listen to the lyrics, you can take away something different from it. And
well, it sounded patriotic.
Exactly. It sounded like, you know, hey, everybody, yeah, let's go go to the 4th of July and do a thing. And then if you listen to the lyrics, it's like, oh, no, this is like a critique of like what it means to basically be a human and have free will, and what you and it's fantastic that it's sort of wrapped into like a pill you would give a dog. You wrap it in a little cheese and give it to the dog.
Yeah, well, that's Devo. That's just a good way of putting it. Because look, I mean, our worldview and our view of humanity, while it was dark, it was based on real evidence, real, just hit you over the head over and over, empirical evidence that if you're not blind, you can't miss it. And of course, in the 50s, there was a famous behavioralist psychologist, Erich Fromm, F-R-O-M-M, and he wrote a book where he describes how people wanted freedom from choice.
Right.
How they put their heads in the sand and they conform, even when they are not, forced through some threat. This is what they do. This is a problem with human nature. And so the people that are capable of logic and critical thought are in the minority. And that's why there's always this rush towards dictatorships. And that's now what in America, our wonderful experiment of democracy, it lasted a long time.
It was a good run.
But
yeah.
it was a good run, and it's just in the last 50 years, it's been death by 1,000 cuts where, you know, the average person wants to, what's the cliche about the frog in the warm water that's being
where you turn the heat up slowly, the frog doesn't notice until it's already boiling.
Until it's too late.
Yeah.
That's kept going here where people, all the glass half full people kept going, oh no, we're going to turn that around. There's still plenty of democracy. You're just overstating it. We can undo what they've done. And what they don't notice is the glass kept getting smaller. You know, it was like a shell game where they kept putting the glass back in front of the person, and this time it wasn't an 8-ounce glass, it was a 6-ounce glass, and so on, down to a shot glass. And now the system has been so destroyed and rigged by right-wing ideologues who hate liberty, hate freedom, don't like democracy, that they've won. And what you saw the Supreme Court just do in Wisconsin, by forcing people to vote while under the threat of COVID-19 and death, right, to make sure that they disenfranchised tens of thousands of voters who were mostly poor and Democratic.
Yeah.
This was just they're not even trying to hide it anymore. This was a point-blank assassination where they put the gun to the head of Miss Liberty and pull the trigger point-blank and go, what are you going to do about it? And nobody can do anything about it. Now you have a 36% minority controlling everything.
Yep.
And that's the way it's going to go. So now what's happening is, if it wasn't bad enough already where you have a subhuman, vile dictator president who loves fellow dictators across the globe, COVID-19 was a gift in his lap bigger than the 9/11 was a gift in W's lap to pull through the Patriot Act and TSA, right? That's kindergarten. This is the big deal, folks. This ain't going away. This is now going to be the surveillance state, a plutocracy where any illusion about freedom or privacy is gone.
Right.
And
well, yeah. It's. I mean, that started with the Patriot Act.
Rigged, electoral college rigged, voter suppression, gerrymandering. It's done. It's over, folks. Somebody left the barn door open, and now you got trouble in the barnyard, as Daddy Know-It-All said in Devo's first movie.
Yeah, and that's. I mean, it's hard to reconcile because one always, when one is in the aspect of folks that are critical thinking and that want to take action and be helpful to their environment and create upon something, actionable items are helpful. And when there's just such this mass, I'm just going to reuse W's term of shock and awe effect. This miasma of hopelessness just descends on everyone.
Well, it's,
which is by design, I might add. Like that's not an accident. Like this is, I mean,
no
psyops.
That's the idea.
We did this stuff in. This is really going to be a digression, but I mean, we did this stuff in South American countries. Like this is not. I mean, this obviously COVID-19 was not necessarily a planned thing. That was a happy accident for the forces of autocracy. But
well, of course, the conspiracy people think it was planned. But regardless, I think humans are just weasels and sleazeballs that seize upon chaos and go, hey, you know what? This is an opportunity, right? So I think COVID-19. It's a moot point whether it was a lab thing or a bat. Doesn't matter to me.
What a Devo thing, by the way. That if
well, you're watching all the authoritarians in the world seize upon it
right
as a tool to weaponize to do what they were trying to do already, and now it's going to be so easy because like when I went to the campus at May 4th, 1970, and was a member of SDS and protesting the expansion of the war into Vietnam, what they did, the expansion of the war from Vietnam into Cambodia without an act of Congress, that's what that protest was about that day. What they did is they waited till that morning to have the governor and the head of the university declare martial law, which removes your ability to assemble and freedom of speech and all kinds of other First Amendment rights. Martial law is the go-to plan of despots. Well, COVID-19 is like blanket martial law. This is incredible.
Yeah, and not MARSHALL, as I believe Senator Marco Rubio said, as if it was a character in a fighting game. Martial law.
Yeah, martial law, right?
I mean, you got to find your laugh somewhere, even as the world burns.
All the stuff now is gallows humor. That's it. Otherwise, you'd pick up a gun. But the problem is, it's the right wing that has all the guns, and they shoot the good guys.
Yeah. Well, so with that, there was always sort of a deep, dark, and abiding humor to what Devo did, and the fact that there was a commitment to the bit of whatever you were doing. What I appreciated so much with Devo's stuff is, as much as there's dark humor to it, it wasn't like, "Hey, everybody, look at this." It was very much. It was there if you listen closely, if you looked for it, and it was there in the critiques and in the fact that you're presenting an absurdist tableau sometimes.
Well, we weren't really partisan. When we said we're all Devo, we meant it, and we were including ourselves.
Right.
Because we were talking about the basic flaw in human nature that's the fatal flaw, which you're now seeing crystallize.
Yeah.
And so you're right, and we were funny, and we were ironic, and there was satire on purpose. Like you said, we were wrapping in cheese on purpose. Because you can see what happens when you don't. Then you're Lenny Bruce or you're George Carlin when they quit being funny because they were really smart people who really saw what the fuck was going on, and they couldn't even afford to be funny anymore. They went for it, and that was their self-destruction.
Yeah, because instead of actually telling jokes, they're just announcing very well-reasoned and substantial media and culture critiques that are
it's like,
dangerous
you want
truths.
to lose your voice in the marketplace and lose your life, go for it, right?
Yeah. So there's no way out of it. This is going to be an awkward transition. But can you tell me about the making of that record? Because what I don't want to do is the listening audience to fill their pockets full of stones and walk into the ocean, which I think we're dangerously close to. But
don't give them that satisfaction. Don't start committing suicide. Take out some of these mother.
Right, exactly. Make yourself of use, please. Jesus.
Absolutely. Go down fighting.
Freedom of Choice.
Oh, Freedom of Choice was a fun record because we had lived with those early songs on the first two records for years and years and years. But now we were moving from, songs of innocence to songs of experience, and we were experiencing a lot as individuals and as a band and been through a lot, and we were changing and getting excited about new things. And Bob Mothersbaugh and I had been, for a long time, big fans of R&B music and black dance music and funk, and we didn't see any need to keep, smacking the rock and roll drums over and over and over. And we talked, back then it was open collaboration where we talk about all these ideas, right? We discuss things. And so Mark was really on board with that idea. He liked what Stevie Wonder had done with the keyboard, liked using Moog synthesizers to play bass parts. And so
of course. Yeah, of course.
we agreed that we were going to do Devo's version of R&B, which would be more like robot R&B, and that I wouldn't play a bass guitar. I would play bass synthesizer on a Moog, and the parts wouldn't be rock and roll parts. And Alan was totally on board with that. He was an accomplished jazz drummer, and he liked the more counterpointed stuff and dancey beats.
Right.
So he didn't have to lay down these wooden, right? So we went off on a little adventure, writing these kind of songs with these other kind of beats and bass parts, and that made us excited. That made us looking forward every day to get together at 2 or 3 in the afternoon and work until midnight with a dinner break, right? And that's what we did. We rented a studio in Hollywood, and we were there for like 6 weeks, and that's all we did every fucking day, 7 days a week.
Wow.
And we wrote those songs between November of 79 and January of 78. And Freedom of Choice is what the last song we wrote.
Really? And did you already know the album was going to be called Freedom of Choice, or did that come later?
Nope. The album was going to be called something else at that point. It was going to, I think it was going to be called It's Time for Devo. And,
As it turns out, it was time for Devo, but that's a different story.
I didn't think that was very strong. And Freedom of Choice just galvanized us. That was it.
Well, certainly, and that's also the record that, and was the video, I would say, that really brought you to the mainstream, and as evidenced by that wonderful DVD. I mean, you guys were into video, not only before it was cool, but before, like, really you were...
Before there was video.
Before there was video, exactly.
I mean, you got to understand, our first, quote, videos were 16 millimeter film.
Right.
And that all happened because I was good friends with Chuck Statler, who was a film buff and a fellow student at Kent State who was older than me. We became really tight friends. And I was a visual artist, he was a visual artist, and I got totally hooked on film because of him.
That was the, was that the in the beginning was the end?
Yeah, I started learning about film and asked him a million questions. And he had a camera, he had a Bolex. And so we started shooting little things, not as Devo, like him and I, me being a subject in the film and coming up with scenarios. And I didn't know what I was doing as directing back then. I thought the director was the guy that ran the camera.
Right.
That turns out to be the director of photography. But the director is the guy with the narrative, the idea. But when you're making a film, you really have to know a lot before you're going to be a good director. And I didn't know what I needed to know, but Chuck was teaching me. So, yes, we were making films starting in 1975. We started making The Beginning Was the End. And it was a short, and we were going to introduce the idea of this band that was only a concept. There was no real Devo. So Devo was an idea, and that was, that was Bob Mothersbaugh, Mark Mothersbaugh, Jim Mothersbaugh on drums, who was this technician trying to make electronic drums back then.
Back then, wow.
And those were homemade electronic drums.
76, right? I mean, this is to place it. Am I correct? Around that time period? Yeah, Jesus.
Yeah.
And first appearance of Bougie Boy, first appearance of General Boy, like characters that would be part of the Devo world for years to come.
Mark and I were mask collectors, and we would always put on masks, and we would do performance art dramas. Chuck started shooting some of that stuff, and we sat down and mapped out that first movie.
Right.
I still have like notebooks and funny, this on the back of a menu one night when we were eating dinner together with Chuck, I started mapping out scenes, and I still have that menu.
That's awesome.
That I wrote on the back of, So we were totally, Devo always was a multimedia concept from the beginning. It was on purpose, Totally.
Well, and even before, I don't know the exact timeline, but some of the things that you guys experimented with, like the Girl You Want video, for instance, how it's, almost like a Beatles-esque, Beatles on Sullivan sort of send up, but then like is it the contrast? Like all the colors are kind of just really just screwed up to the point that I would imagine if you saw it.
We found out what happened. Well, we found out what happened in a video editing suite by accident when it's just like it's the video version of audio phase shifting when things go out of phase.
Right.
So when the RGB goes out of phase, there's this complete mutation of all the colors. And we said, okay, we're going to do that on purpose. We're going to take our video and we're going to put it out of phase on purpose. We're going to shoot it, it'll look good that way.
Right, and it's that same sense of not just excitement in the form and what you can do with it, but also making use of the restrictions and the trappings.
Lots of restrictions.
Yeah.
Lots.
That's certainly something that I took from creatively from that, as many others have as well, of making that part of the adventure or whatnot. And then if you watch them all together, like in that DVD, which I don't even know if that's available in another format, it's really quite compelling and can be a great introduction to the band, because I think you get a good sense of you guys' personality and like overall ethos that maybe you wouldn't get just from someone making you a playlist or a mixtape,
right,
if this was the days of yore.
Yeah, we shot Freedom of Choice and Girl You Want for a total of $25,000, and using those huge old video machines and those heavy cameras. And, that's no money at all. I mean, we went to some casting agency and got all extras for those girls in the crowd for Girl You Want. But then we didn't have enough, so we dressed up some guys in drag. I don't know if you know, there's 3 guys in drag in that crowd.
I've watched enough that I actually did notice that. And what's funny is I watched it recently and I was like, oh, I didn't notice that guy.
Yeah. And of course, Chuck went to some company called Employees Overload or something, where people that were looking for jobs, signing up for unemployment, looking for jobs. He got the kid to get in the electric weight reduction machine with milkshake.
Yeah.
From Employees Overload. Yeah.
What does that listing look like? Needed.
That was a really crude machine, too.
One human being to be on 1950s style weight reduction machine for music video.
I know.
Safety not guaranteed.
Really cheap. And what's funny is he was so stiff and such a bad actor that the milkshake wasn't coming out. So we had to get him to do things to make the milkshake spill on purpose.
Oh, that's amazing.
What you find out when you're a director, you have an idea, and then you realize this is really hard to make this happen. You have the vision.
What's my motivation for the milkshake spilling out? Well, you're on a machine, dude.
when you're doing comedy with untalented people, which Devo excelled at.
So with Whip It, it happened to be a confluence of, overplayed or not, brilliant song, brilliant video, perfect time where MTV was allowing the rabble in because they hadn't have it figured out yet.
That's right.
And all of these things conspire to change things up, I think would be a charitable way to say that, right?
Yeah, because we had started our tour for Freedom of Choice thinking, okay, this is the last tour because
they already told you. Yeah.
Warner's had put all their money on Girl You Want, and it stiffed. So,
which is crazy because that's I feel like of all the that's a song that I could play for rockist people, and they would get it immediately. Like it's just such a peppy instant hook sort of song, but whatever.
Yeah, so it was like that's it. We put our money on black on the roulette wheel, and it didn't come up. So we go out and we're playing small venues and thinking this is the end. And Cal Rudman, who's a local radio programmer in the Southeast out of Florida, when there were independent radio guys like him, there wasn't like Clearwater and all these things. It was like he had control of the whole southeastern United States. He put out the Rudman Report, and when he said things, his DJs would play it, and he could, it was based on what he liked, So he had ears. He really had ears. So Cal Rudman, somebody had given him the record from Warner's and said, Girl You Want. He said, no, I like Whip It. So he started playing Whip It about the time we're on tour, and within 2 weeks, we had to stop the tour because we had to rebook everything because it blew through the roof and started playing in New York, then LA. And we went from 400 seaters to like 3,000 seaters. And then Warner said, hey, you got to take a break and do a video because, we hadn't made a video to that song.
Right. So that was just from the radio play then?
Yeah.
Okay. And so you make the video.
We had a 2-week hiatus in LA and had a big $15,000 for a video, and we shot that in our rehearsal studio in a 16-hour day. And I had the whole idea from a men's magazine because Mark and I used to go to these novelty stores, and we just loved these like 60s horrible men's magazines like Dude and Nugget and
they're
women with big fake boobs and
there's one that says I think it's Man's Life, and it's a bloody guy fighting an alligator, and the subtitle is Give Me Back My Arm. And it's one of my favorites. I know the type very well.
Well, that's the kind of that was the kind of stories they had. Except this one had a story about a stunt man that married a stripper in L.A., left the business, and he had a dude ranch in Arizona. And he every day at noon for the people that were staying at the dude ranch, he had this act where he'd whip his wife's clothes off in the corral. And of course, it was there were all the pictures.
Yeah.
Right? And, it never went all the way. She'd end up with pasties and a bikini bottom on and stockings and heels. So it was like, okay, that's it. Whip It's going to be, Mark's going to whip the clothes off this woman while all-American kind of Reagan-esque girls and boys in the corral cheer him on.
Right. Which insanely like just bizarre and subversive as like a David Lynch film or something, but like done in this like sped up sort of way. Yeah.
Exactly. And then I added the woman making whipped cream, to make things literal, and her assistant at the Country Mart in Brentwood was that cross-eyed Asian girl. She really was cross-eyed.
She wasn't acting? She was actually... Oh, wow.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Oh, yeah. And the girl whose clothes we whip off, she had a shop called The Buttery that made crepes.
Oh. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The butter.
The butter.
Yeah. People thought she was Grace Jones.
Yeah, well, she had that same sort of look. I mean, it was definitely.
I know.
If you were only a casual person, maybe flipping on a young burgeoning MTV. Yeah, if you don't pay attention that closely, maybe. Yeah, all right.
No.
Okay, so things change. Devo's playing bigger rooms. Clearly, the conversation of this is your last record, guys, goes away. But what they want to do is they want a record with like 10 whippets on it.
Oh yeah! Suddenly, overnight we went from the nerd losers to their heroes, and
right.
Of course they threw big party for us and big in-store things, and we were heroes. And so then when we started the next record, of course they're all going, we need another whippet,
right?
Yeah. And they kept waiting for that whippet, but they didn't hear it.
Well, and so that record, of course, you got Through Being Cool, which is, as I mentioned, like far earlier on, it was sort of like an anthem for all the freaks, nerds, and weirdos of the world.
Yep. Yeah.
And you start off the record with that, and of course, we're talking now about New Traditionalists, and you guys were known for the Energy Domes, and the Energy Dome, as I'm speaking to you right now, there's an Energy Dome in front of you. It's the iconic Devo image. But for people less familiar with the band, or maybe they just didn't give a crap, it wasn't like that was necessarily essential to the Devo look at that time. That's where you had the JFK style pompadours, if I remember correctly. Right? That was the motif for that era.
Right.
So you got these guys that are, everyone wants like a new whippet, but whatever. Like you've got what's on there? Beautiful World's on there. Right? I forgot about
Beautiful
that. Love Without Anger. We talked about that as well. Peppy sounding songs that are about really depressing crap.
Yeah.
It's obviously is less successful than Freedom of Choice, but you move forward with your own vision and with the technology that you want. What changes with New Traditionalists? Like being like a band with a quote unquote hit at that time.
Well,
what changes?
We were putting on an elaborate show with synchronized treadmills in this kind of like fast food Greek restaurant set that came apart and became a 2-level thing that we would come out and do the encore, and we would be up. Mark and I would be up on an 8-foot riser after the facade of the temple was stripped away.
Wow.
It was very elaborate, and rear projection film. And people were going nuts. These were big shows. And we were playing places like the Universal Amphitheater. Yeah.
So you're putting on a big show in the grand tradition of like the big rock and roll show, but doing it the Devo way.
But the Devo way, it's not. Yeah, we're using theatrical lighting. We're using props that could have been in a stage play. We were doing the things we had always wanted to do, or at least a little bit of them, that we could never do. And that was exciting to us. It was thrilling to do this show. And people loved it. They were standing up from song one and never sat down. We were playing theaters, like with seats, proscenium arch stages, because of the kind of show we were doing.
Right. And was that, let's see, I'm trying to place it. Is that around the same time that you guys did Letterman, or was that was earlier?
I don't think we did Letterman yet at that point. We had done, of course, Saturday Night Live, Fridays, Mike Douglas.
Fridays, Jesus, yeah.
Merv Griffin. Oh, God. What was the one where the Wolfman Jack was the MC on?
Oh.
Came on Saturday night, I think, or Friday night. Don Kirshner.
Don Kirshner's something, whatever. Yeah.
And Wolfman Jack would be the MC. Yeah, we did that. And
the Midnight Special.
Oh, yeah, that's it.
Jesus.
We did that.
That was a long way to go for the Midnight Special.
I know.
Sorry about that.
And we did the guy, the famous guy that was still around from American Bandstand. He never went away. The guy that never aged until he suddenly looked.
Until he did.
From 30, he looked 80. So.
Until the pact with the devil ran out and he aged 90 years in the course of a day.
Right. Yeah. The picture of Dorian Gray, yeah.
Mr. Dick Clark,
Dick Clark. We did him.
Yep.
Yeah, he didn't know what to make of us. That really freaked him out. But I don't think we did Letterman until we did That's Good and Peekaboo on Oh No, It's Devo.
A much misunderstood record that I think actually has fantastic songs. And
I love that record.
I think the most underappreciated Devo record. So can you speak to the creation of that and where the band was at the time there? Because if I remember right, there was like a video for a bunch of them that were kind of like strewn together as well.
That was the whole concept there was to try to seamlessly merge what our videos would look like with our live show.
Right, like the overall presentation, right.
Yeah, if you saw a Devo video, that's what you were going to see when you went to the show. Because what we had done is we had shot all the backgrounds to the full song, but we had taken the sequencer line tracks and click tracks at the same time of putting down a mix onto a second machine so that our films would sync up to just the click tracks. So now when we played live to the sequencers,
right,
it looked like the video because you were watching the video behind us totally in sync with characters singing, with everything totally in sync with the music. And it was on a screen that was 17 by 25 feet, and people were, they were shitting their pants. It was fantastic. And the songs were dark. I mean, that was a cocaine.
I can hear it, yeah.
I especially love Peekaboo. That's one of my favorite songs ever.
Peekaboo, you said?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. That's an all-timer for me. Wasn't there a song that like was partially John Hinckley lyrics?
Well, That's Good.
I Desire.
Yes. Desire. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes, the first two verses are from Hinckley's poem to Jodie Foster.
Jodie Foster. Yeah. That's pretty dark.
Well, we had to get her permission.
Was she cool with it?
She came to.
Well, obviously it was made it on there, but like what was how did that conversation go?
Well, she was very uptight when she came and wanted to know why in the hell we wanted to do that.
Yeah.
And we said, well, listen to the third verse. We're putting him down for what he did, for what he said to you. We're telling the world that he's a dangerous psycho, which the third verse does tell you that.
Right.
And personally, if he hadn't tried to kill Reagan, which I'm sorry he missed, but if he hadn't tried to kill Reagan, I think the poetry was good crazy man poetry. I mean, I pledge allegiance to the fact that your love is all that matters. Come on.
Yeah.
That's good psychos.
that's rock solid psycho lyricism, to be sure.
Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, his lyrics that we used are excellent.
So there's a period where, there's Shout and Total Devo, and since I want to value your time and I want to make the best use of it, I don't necessarily want to belabor each of those records. I am utterly fascinated and legitimately love the Something for Everybody record.
I love Something for Everybody. That was a return to form.
It's well, I know I already said that the most underrated record is Oh No, It's Devo, and I'll stand by that assessment, but I think the second most underrated is definitely that one. And
yeah,
I love the
concept. Never even got, like, Warner's failed to bring that to market. It didn't even get a chance. It didn't get a chance.
And I love like little things like, oh, the focus group says that people find blue to be a more soothing color, so we change the energy domes to blue.
Yeah.
And the fact that it's brick walled mastered too. It's like mastered like modern stuff. Like and it's
that's right.
It's a good commitment to the bit, as I mentioned earlier. That it's like for those that it's like a nice.
We
Easter
went all the way.
Yeah.
We went all the way, and we were sending up modern marketing on purpose.
You allowed people to vote on the track listing, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. Yeah.
I find that record to be fantastic, and I'm enjoy playing it for people because a lot of people just missed them completely, or they weren't aware of it, but it was somehow incredibly Devo, but also of its time at the same time at the same place.
There's songs on there that I just love. I mean, I love "Don't Shoot, I'm a Man." I love "Fresh."
Yep.
I love "Please, Baby, Please."
Yep.
And then, if you thought "Beautiful World" was dark, folks, then there's "No Place Like Home." It makes "Beautiful World" seem like a warm-up act.
Yeah, it's pretty. It's good, man. That's a good record that doesn't get its due, and I'm not going to say that's going to be people's key takeaway from this, but I'm saying it right now. Pay attention to that record because it's good.
Well, in the age of COVID-19, I think radio should play "No Place Like Home."
Yeah, it's definitely an anthem of the times, to be sure. Can you please tell us about Devo 2.0? Because I find that so fascinating and compelling and hilarious.
Well, that was Dada.
Yeah, absolutely.
The guy from Hollywood Records said, "Hey, I want to repurpose Devo songs for kids. Do you have any ideas?" And
you guys are singing about pervy stuff and like really like dark subject matter. It's like kid songs, really?
Honest to God. And he picked the songs, right? And here's the end of that story. I said, "Well, okay." I said, "Would you let me cast a kids band? Just like it's the Monkees, but it's going to be Devo Kids, and then we'll do like animation and live action combined, and it'll be like, oh no, it's Devo except kids." And he goes, "Great, let's do it." So I did all the work. I cast that band. I even went on a 5-city tour with them. They could really play. It went nowhere for 2 reasons. Disney had their, whatever it was called, High School Rock or whatever they already had going on.
Oh, right, yeah.
And they didn't want this thing competing with it. And when they sent it up the chain of command to the Suits, the Suits took a look at it and ordered a text of all the lyrics.
That's when they decided to look at it, huh?
So it got pulled until we censored all the lyrics to their satisfaction, which killed it on TV in its time slot, and just ruined the ratings. They basically sabotaged the whole thing. But my favorite was when they go, our biggest problem here. They had so many problems.
Yeah, I was going to say, where to begin?
They had a problem with "That's Good." They had this lyric here: "Life's a bee without a buzz. It's going great till you get stung." We know what that means, man. They're talking about a drug deal there. You're getting a buzz, and you're cool until the cops pop you. Oh, really? We had guys in suits that were going ghetto on it, telling us that.
Oh yeah, you nailed us there.
We wrote that 40 years ago, and that's not what it meant. Sorry, you got to change that, right? And of course, we just made something really inane and stupid. But my favorite was the one that I solved for them, thinking they're never going to be so stupid as to let me do this. It was Uncontrollable Urge, and they go, "Listen, you can't have this uncontrollable urge. We know what that is. That's sex. So you've got to define the uncontrollable urge, right?
Okay.
We go, no, we never say it's sex. They go, that's the problem. Every kid will know it's sex. You've got to describe what that uncontrollable urge is, right?
Mm-hmm.
And can you make it about junk food?
That's even more Devo than the original.
No shit, because they're selling junk food in the afternoon on the Disney Channel,
yeah,
right?
Exactly.
So I send a new chorus that says, before dinner and after lunch, I get a snack attack and I need to munch. And it's this 13-year-old girl that's sexy.
Yeah.
And they go, great.
My God.
So we got it, and that's what she said.
Oh, wow.
I know.
What an incredible thing to have happen. And I like the, ultimate, at the time I found it, initially I found it upsetting because I didn't know like what it was. And then I was like, oh no, I think that they're in on this. And like, this is like, okay, this is the whole thing. I'll stick with it. But the idea,
you're trying to go to a new demographic.
Well, sure. I mean, and the idea that Devo lives on, without like the people that originally comprised the band, much in the same way that, the Star Trek franchise has, different characters with the J.J. Abrams version playing the same roles and things along those lines. And franchising.
Kids that age, in reality, the mainstream culture, all they were listening to is filthy hip-hop.
Right.
I mean, that's who those kids were really listening to that, right? Yeah. So we could get them to listen to Devo songs, in whatever year that was now, 2004 or 5 or whatever.
That sounds about right, mid-2000s, yeah.
So, all the better, right? All the better.
What a crazy time. What a crazy... so around that same time, Jihad Jerry?
Yeah, well,
is that the sum takeaway is, well,
that was, he didn't get the love. I had a Twitter account and everything, and I was getting death threats, either from Muslims or from real patriotic right-wingers that wanted to kill me. I thought a guy that was nearly 60 years old wearing a turban that was as jokey as Sam the Sham and the Pharaohs would never be something that people would misconstrue. I thought they'd be in on it because it said, "Mine is not a holy war." That's the name of the record, right? And it was a vicious attack of, W's right-wing policies. I mean, there's a song about him on the record.
Yeah.
Called "Hey, What's Up?"
Well, hey, think about it this way: that band ISIS was around for a long time, well before the other ISIS. So,
yeah. Whoops.
Suppose it could be worse. Jerry, God, it's so great talking to you. I need to close things down. I do a couple things I want to get to. Yeah. Do you hear, last couple things, do you hear any of the influence of what Devo's done in other bands and music? And by that, I mean not sound-alikes, but bands that take the same ethos behind music and that critical thinking and danger-filled mindset?
Well, I have heard things that maybe aren't stylistically like Devo that I was envious of, like "This Is America."
Yes. Oh, yeah. That's absolutely a Devo style. I mean, just from becoming the same place. Yeah. Childish Gambino.
Yeah, he is great. That was an amazing video too. Totally amazing. I mean, that's up there. And I've heard things. Yeah, year after year. I loved Andre 3000's "Hey Ya." That was fucking great. There's been so many. I still like what 9 Inch Nails does still.
And there's a lot of bands that maybe aren't around or are not household names. Bands like Brainiac or Future of the Left, Melvins, things along those lines.
I like that. I like those.
I guess where I'm going with this is I would just personally like to extend a thank you for paving the trail for all us freaks, nerds, and weirdos, and for making this music and living this life so that we can have a little small light in the darkness that may or may not be a train in these dark times.
Well, as a pioneer who got scalped, I really appreciate you saying that to me. Thank you.
Jerry Casale, thank you so much, man.
Bye-bye. Next time.
Until next time. Holy crap. I hope you guys enjoyed that half as much as I did. I don't know if it'd be possible to enjoy it as much as I did, but
is this thing on?
It's rare that I'm speechless. You all know that. Jerry Casale, everybody. Well, you know.
Are we going?
Thanks for listening, everybody. Pure F Radio Hours up next for live listeners. This is Conan Neutron's Protonic Reversal. That's Jerry Casale. Oh my god.
Test.
RadioNeutron.com for the archives.
As we come to the close of our broadcast day.
Well, you know.
This is my farewell transmission. Signing off, Mr. and Mrs. America, and all the ships at sea.
This show airs on Radio Nope. It's
Within the sound of my voice.
usually Thursdays, 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central, 6 p.m. Mountain, 5 p.m. Pacific. All the time these days.
I've got
Get it where you get your podcasts.
50,000 watts of power.
Patreon.com/Protonic Reversal to get episodes quicker ahead of time.
I want to ionize the air.
Thank you to everyone that's been supporting the show.
This microphone turns sound into electricity.
We're all Devo.
Can you hear me now? Out on Route 128, you're dark and lonely.
Stay safe. Take it easy.
I got my radio on. Can you hear me now? 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 See the radio. And that snare drum and that drum roll means we've got a winner. If you're the fifth caller, or any caller at all, welcome to my top 10. I'd like to thank our sponsor. But we haven't got a sponsor. Not She was prepared to prove it. This one goes out to a special girl. There is no special girl. It's the end of radio. The last announcer plays the last record. The last what? Leaves the transmitter. Circles the globe in search of a listener. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Is it really broadcasting if there's no one there to receive? It's the end of radio. As we come to the close of our broadcast day, got my radio on. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? This is a test! If this had been a real emergency,